Better Questions fam. We've got Caitlin Pyle today. The reception to this one I expect to be interesting. If you're traditionally like really locked on with where your faith is and you don't want it to go anywhere else, I don't know that you should listen. And then if you're discontent with where it is and you want to find something else, then I think she offers really awesome perspective. And I would just encourage everybody that does listen to listen with an open mind. And if you don't like it, you'll be invited on the show. So the question today is Jesus bigger than religion? Could he be bigger than religion? So Caitlin, I was looking up your stuff. I don't know. Whenever I see somebody I appreciate their mind, I'm like, I got to get them on here. I'm a nobody in the podcast game for now. Hopefully not for long, right? But so thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm always excited to have good conversations.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really refreshing for me. So I'm leaving. I don't want to say leaving Christianity, right? But I've seen you and I have come to the same realization, I think, about some things. So it'll be refreshing to talk to a new spirit about spirituality, because I'm existing in Bible studies where people are like, I don't know, the persecution is crazy. So it'll be fun to talk to, I would say, you seem to be my people. So I'm really excited to dive into that, how you came to that. Your van, you're just a very interesting avatar, right? I love interesting people. So super appreciate you coming here. Before anything, let's just assume the 10 or 100 people that are following me have no idea who you are. So just real quick from birth to today, give me the high level wickets if you don't mind. I think your story is going to be, there's going to be so much I want to unpack. So I may ask you to come back twice if that's okay. Because I don't know if we can get it all today.
Of course. Yeah. And I have no time constraints today. I'm semi-retired. I'll get to that. But yeah, long story short, for sure. I'm 38. I grew up in the Central Florida area in Orlando, and I kind of grew up in the sticks. And I didn't necessarily grow up Christian, although I can remember going to a Lutheran church with my grandmother's neighbors once, and they gave us free Bibles or something about the Bible. I'm not even sure what it was. It was 5, right? But I remember seeing this black and white drawing, this sketch of the crucifixion, and that book sat on the hallway by the bathroom, which was right outside of my sister and I's bedrooms in our house growing up. And I just remember being so terrified of that image. Really, there's nails through that guy's hands, and I was unable as a child to comprehend what that was. And I just knew it was bad, and I was scared of it, and I would just tiptoe past the bookshelf. And it wasn't until I was 13, I think I was 13 and I went to a Baptist revival with my grandmother's church, my aunt's church at the time. My dad got invited and invited me. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was people pleasing that caused me to raise my hand when they said, "Did anybody repeat that sinner's prayer? Did anybody repeat that?" And I didn't, because it's all hellfire and brimstone in the Baptist church, if you're familiar. And I was like, well, of course I don't want to go to hell. I didn't understand that it was fear-based at the time. I didn't understand emotions when I was 13. I was dealing with emotions, experiencing emotions, but I think many of us we were taught to suppress them and, give you something to cry about, not asking you how you're feeling. Parents would get mad at you for having feelings. So it was just those weren't allowed. And so I didn't understand what people pleasing was at the time, but I knew that the adults in the room, and I knew I wanted their approval. I knew I wanted them to like me. Plus I had a twin sister that we were always in constant competition with each other. So there was probably part of me that was if I do this, if I accept Jesus, if I become a Christian, I don't really know what that means yet, but I know that they're going to like it. And I gave my life to Christ that night, so to speak, at the revival. And they just pull you in the back room and give you a bunch of pamphlets. And I didn't really know what that meant. We went to a evangelical Christian church, non-denominational after that. I ended up getting baptized in the lake with my SpongeBob t-shirt on. And all my friends were happy about it. I think it was, again, people pleasing in disguise, because I went on to ask many questions. I mean, in high school, I had Catholic friends, and I had a list of Bible verses glued to the inside of my teen study Bible that I thought proved that Catholicism was wrong. Like, you're to call no one on earth father, you're praying to saints, which is a form of worship and it's idolatry, like all these things. And I would argue with my Catholic friends. And of course, I didn't like that very much. But then I would also ask my youth pastor questions. I'd ask my youth pastor questions that he couldn't answer. And I thought it was funny because in a way, I wasn't taking it seriously. And I look back and I now know that the Bible is a stack of text. And I largely credit Rob Bell. I don't know if you ever read any of his books. I've read all of his books on Christianity. He's now branched off into other things. But Rob Bell has a book called What is the Bible? Excuse me. And he talks about how the Bible is useful, but it's a stack of texts. Deuteronomy is a legal document, an ancient Hebrew legal document. There are historical documents. There are poems. There are letters. Like when Paul wrote the letter to Timothy saying that all scripture is God breathed, that was the letter to Timothy at the time. And now it's considered scripture. So now it's considered that everything that Paul wrote in his letters to the Corinthians, Ephesians, Romans, whatever, they're all scripture now, when it was just Paul's opinion. So I didn't really get into that area of my upbringing until like later in life. I married a Christian guy. He was a virgin at 28. I wasn't a virgin, but I was terrified especially for my dad to find out, because I was in purity culture. I spent 2 semesters abroad in college, and while my friends were going on mission trips, I was like, I gotta explore the world, y'all. But I was feeling guilty about it because I felt no inclination to go out and spread the so-called good news that Jesus died for your sins to save you from hell, right? That's what Christians think the good news is. And I didn't quite understand what the good news actually was at that point, but I just knew that I didn't want to go and spend my time out of guilt, I gave them money to finance their vacations abroad. That's a whole other rabbit hole. But I was in Germany and I was loving it. But I was also in love. I had a boyfriend, and of course we were sleeping together. And I felt so guilty. I got my first gray hairs at age 20, and I've since come to accept those. But the guilt and the shame that came out of purity culture was certainly a catalyst to me leaving it behind altogether. And I can't even place a pinpoint on the date where I'm like, that's it, because after my divorce, I started the divorce process in 2018. I got married in 2011 at barely 24 years old, to a guy I barely knew while I was on hormonal birth control, which totally messes up who you're even attracted to in the first place. And of course, the church doesn't really talk about that much. I mean, the Catholic Church does, but that's another rabbit hole. But I was going through a lot of deconstruction after that. I didn't even know that's what it was called. I was terrified of hell. I was experiencing a lot of mental health symptoms that, of course, our society and even the church, even Christianity is just like, oh, well, you got to get on antidepressants. They exist for a reason. God gave us these gifts. God bless these scientists with knowledge to figure out how to help us. And no, what's the word? Credence, I don't even know if that's the right word, is given to the fact that these systems are broken. These systems, like mental health systems, are completely broken. And I went to doctor after doctor trying to figure out why I was having these like intrusive thoughts, why I was having and it ended up being OCD, persecutory religious OCD that I experienced, where I believed that Satan was talking to me through license plates. It was a psychosis, and Satan was tormenting me through video games that I would try to play to distract myself, like word games. I think there's one called like Word Bloom or Word Blossom, something like that, where you're looking for words in the puzzle out of the letters that they give you, and the words that would come up would be like avarice, greed, violence, cancer. Like, just I don't even know why those words were in the puzzle to begin with. So to this day, I still think like, yeah, that's totally possible that you can be messed with by evil spirits if your energetic field is broken, and it allows like bad energy to come in. Like, I think we do have a hedge of protection, because I am not an atheist, and I think that's one thing that kind of bothers me about Christianity sometimes, is that they think if you don't believe in Christianity that you have to be an atheist, and there's just so much more freedom outside of that control system that I found, that makes things feel a lot better. But I think getting through it was like 2.5 years of suicidal depression, Kevin. I was sitting on my couch, dealing with these hallucinations, dealing with these persecutory delusions, intrusive thoughts, not knowing what they were, only being given pills that I didn't want to take because deep down I knew that the pills were not the answer. The pills were not going to solve the root cause of the issue, which ended up being toxicity of the brain, toxicity of the body, toxicity of environment, toxicity of relationships. If your brain doesn't have what it needs to function properly, it's not going to. If there's something in your brain that's not supposed to be there, like I ended up having a minor TBI that I didn't know could be caused by emotional trauma, drug use. I was using a lot of cannabis in times prior to that, and I'd stopped, but because it wasn't making anything better. Doctors had prescribed me Xanax to deal with the extreme anxiety I was feeling. That can cause injury to the brain, and all those things. If your brain, which is doing the thinking, can't think properly, then you're going to have thoughts that are not necessarily yours. And if you identify with those thoughts, then it can cause a lot of damage. And ultimately, I did a lot of research. I was reading tons of books, listening to Richard Rohr, listening to Rob Bell, rereading Love Wins by Rob Bell because I was so afraid that I was going to hell, that this was hell. I felt so disconnected and dead inside. I hated myself, and I needed to go through that fire. I needed to go through that valley of the shadow of death to ultimately fear no evil, right? Because I understood that my thoughts were creating that reality. And there are things that were outside of my control, but also were in my control. And I needed to understand what those were that were causing me to have those thoughts. And if you could take your thoughts captive, so to speak, and realize that they were not serving you, then you could shift your thoughts, shift your energy into a way that is serving you. And it's not delusional to think that, because I used to tell myself, like, this toxic positivity, you're trying to think positive and say better things about yourself and repeat the affirmations, but they all sound like lies. They all feel like lies if you don't actually believe them. So you have to dig deeper and understand, like, why do you believe what you believe? And when it comes back to Christianity, this doctrine that I had fallen for, this, or tried to believe, right? I couldn't actually believe it. I was like, do we really live on a planet where we have a God who requires blood sacrifice for us to be made whole and right with him? Like, no. And when I start reading parables like that Jesus spoke of and told, the parable of the prodigal son, it always comes back to that. Was there a sacrifice that the prodigal son, had to make before he was accepted by his father, or did he just have to change his mind and come home? And that's what repentance is, right? Repentance is changing our mind, changing our viewpoint. And that doesn't necessarily happen at the drop of a hat. Like, you can't just be like, okay, now I believe in Jesus. Like, something has to happen. Something has to happen for you to have that renewing, that repentance, that seeing things differently. It's a consciousness thing. And Christians hate when you talk about consciousness because they don't talk about it in the Bible explicitly. They hate when you talk about energy because it's not in the Bible. And that's what's so stunting. And that's what I really dealt with in that time period. It was my early 30s. I'm now 38, and I had to do a lot of soul searching, a lot of making up for lost time, because the thing is, when you find something like Christianity, and I remember thinking this when I became a Christian, I'm like, well, I'm really lucky I found the truth. Like, I don't have to do any more work to find it. I don't have to do any more. It was easy. It was comfortable. It was like, well, good thing I found the truth. I don't have to go to hell. Like, everything's good now. Nothing else matters. And it's not, I think my true self was still there. Of course, I went and I studied abroad. I forced my ex-husband to go to South America for a year with me. He ended up liking it, but I ended up doing all the things that my other friends who were steeped in Christianity were not. They were keeping their lives small, having kids. Some of them did go and work abroad and stuff, and that was great. But I no longer really associate with them because I know that they probably think I'm an apostate, and I don't want to use the energy. I'd rather use my energy creating content, having conversations like this with people who are open-minded, who are also deconstructing, and not feel like the job of like their job is to get me right back on the path, like, because I've fallen away, right? I haven't fallen away. I've actually gotten closer to what I believe God is, which is love. And it's love is a consciousness.
No,
It's
it's not. No, it can't just be love. No, sorry. It's,
I know, right? I know. It has to be justice. I'm like, what if justice is like invented by humans? What if, like, the reason we need justice is because we exist in a lower consciousness? That is like, justice doesn't exist when you're all one and you're all connected to each other and you're all connected to source. it's impossible to be disconnected. It's impossible to be separate from all that is, because like how can God be omnipresent if but also not in you? Like there's billions of us and God is not in all of us. Like then
well,
he could
let's
know our thoughts.
let's. I don't want to put. Let's. There's so much in the like. I think and unfortunately I do have a hard. I moved it back 30, so I can give us the full. Like I think it'd be. I'm just glad you're in my sphere, by the way. So thank you. It's like so refreshing to hear. The interesting thing, and I'm going to park on theology. Let's get a little bit more life stories. So I just want to be so married. You stuck out the marriage. It sounds like or was that
8 years from 24
8 years,
to 32.
and then I guess I want to talk about so maybe just to be relatable and understand. First of all, I'm really sorry that you went through all of that. Like it's like I mean, that state of mind I can't imagine. I've had my own form of stress and anxiety for a lot of my time. Like I was like, mental anguish is a state of being like toughen up, and I regret that I ever said that to anybody because I found myself in an anxiety-ridden state for the first time at about 27 years old, and it's wild. I can tell that nobody cares about my story, but anyway, I very much I like it's like super hard to get out of. So I'm really sorry that happened, but I just if we can let's live into it so everybody else, because I think you as people, right? And so there's somebody going through the same thing. So basically, let me summarize what I got. At 13, this weird crucifixion image. We're trying to commit ourselves to this ideology that we don't really understand, but you have to, right? There's not really an option. You just need to get in line. Don't ask questions is kind of the statement that still exists, though they don't like I want to be very clear and not disparaging to Christians. Like there's very loving and beautiful Christians, and it's a beautiful faith. I don't want to like diminish everybody as naysayers, but commonly in the ideology, we're going to be critical of what I would call the self-righteous bigots on the side of that, if that's okay to draw that distinction. I want to be fair and favorable to those that are emitting love and look like Christ, and then I want to be really hard on those that I see as the Pharisees. But anyway, so you're in this ideology that doesn't cooperate with your spirit, and it's troubling. And you get married, and you're fighting your way through that, and then somewhere in there, when do you start to battle with like depression and all of that? How long is that? Is that throughout? Is that from the very first? How does that go for you?
Well, a major catalyst to my divorce was I had been smoking a lot of weed, and while I don't espouse that as a solution to anything, because I kind of see through it now, I do see it as it was a major catalyst for me because it showed me that it was possible to think differently and to see things differently and to shift your perception of yourself and the world. And I'd been getting into mindset work. I actually, that's a big part of the story I left out, was that I started a business in 2014. I had been a freelance proofreader for quite a few years. I think from 2009, I started doing it in Germany when I lived abroad for some non-native English speakers, but that evolved into me freelancing, and I got fired from my first and only 40-hour-a-week office job. I was quiet quitting before it was cool. We'll just leave it at that. People are all like, everybody's doing it now, but I was the OG quiet quitter. They were still happy with me, but then they found out that I was spending a lot of my time doing other things when I could have been producing more for the same amount of money, which I hated. And that's why I was quiet quitting. So I took those skills that I learned there.
Wait, let me park. Just because I don't want to go back to, sorry to interrupt, but so you had a job which you didn't love. You were performing, and I want to make sure we're introspective and not prideful. Like you were, for all intents and purposes, doing just a fine job. There's nothing wrong with your performance, but they found out that, so you did what, let's just say arguably, you did in 20 hours what they expected in 40, and then took those other 20 hours and applied them to yourself, and they found that out. And that was the reason. Would that be like if we went to the court of law? Are you pretty confident that that's how that would show? Like you did everything you're supposed to do at work. So yeah, that's a bummer. We won't say the company name. Okay, cool. So then, best thing that ever happens is you get fired. It's like what a blessing.
Yeah, amazing. Yep. And then I turned it into a freelance business. I did go to school for personal training, became a personal trainer. I did that alongside proofreading freelance for 3 years. It was a court reporting office. All my clients were court reporters. I was proofreading the spoken word. It was really fun. And then I ended up turning it into a blog. I started a blog in 2014 called Proofread Anywhere. It still exists today. And I taught people how to proofread transcripts for court reporters. And over the years, that evolved into general proofreading, teaching people how to proofread other things besides transcripts, like books and blog posts and whatnot. And then I got it turned into a multi-million-dollar business. I was making millions of dollars a year, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month with this business. And you get around a lot of different kinds of people. You get exposed to a whole bunch of different ideas. And I can remember thinking to myself, like, none of these people are Christians, like very few of them anyway. And like they're all like living their best life. And it was hedonistic in many ways. And I can remember thinking like, well, like it was still pretty flat to me, like black and white, I should say. And that like, well, I guess like there is no God because these people I respect in the industry that were like way ahead of me in terms of where they had taken their business. And it was and misguided because it wasn't as there was no spirituality to it. It was kind of spiritually empty. And ultimately I recognized that because that's where I ended up was, okay, spirituality is something besides this materialistic hedonistic world that felt so empty, because I felt the emptiness of it. I'm like, is this all there is? Like I'm gonna keep running this business for forever. And it ended up not being that way because I ended up hiring a CEO in 2020 who was like a complete narcissist, total manipulator, but everything can be used for good. And I feel like that's exactly what happened because he convinced me to sell the company. And I didn't want to at the time because I had an audience of like 400,000 people. I was very respected in the work at home space, teaching people how to start businesses. I had launched something called Work at Home School. I'd written a book called Work at Home, and this was before everybody had to work at home and COVID. I released that in 2019. But then the CEO came along and I was manipulated into bringing him on and giving him like ridiculous amounts of money for the work he was doing. But it all ended up paying off, and it was expensive. He was very expensive, but I still ended up winning in the end. And I mean, I had to basically buy my ex-husband out of the business. So I went from having like a negative net worth in 2019 when my divorce was finalized to selling the company in October of 2022, sorry, for $4.5 million. So that felt really good. And my ego loved it because I heard from the grapevine that my ex-husband's dad, who was always like against me in some ways, you could tell, was like, well, you should get half of that, telling my ex-husband. Like, we had divorced 4 years earlier. I was like, why should you get half of that? Like, all the work went into it after the fact to grow it and make it sellable. So, but my ego liked it because it was like I went from having to give you everything from the company that I started to and only reason the company was possible was because of me doing it and doing the work, to, hey, this actually worked out for the better. This worked out for the better. And so we got divorced in April of 2019, but the process was long and arduous. It was really nasty because I felt a lot of resentment towards my ex-husband because he was benefiting from all the work, but not really contributing very much. And I didn't feel like he was entitled to 50% of anything. But of course, we were in Florida and it was 50-50. We didn't have a valid prenup. It had expired after 5 years, which don't ask me, like, it wouldn't have protected me if it hadn't expired. So nobody could know at the beginning of a marriage that you're going to start a multi-million-dollar business. There's absolutely no inkling in my imagination that I would ever be able to do that. But that's what happened. And so the divorce process was ugly, and the depression didn't set in until after that. It was a very traumatizing time for me. I was in the mental hospital twice. I had psychosis, and I was uncovering a lot of things. I can remember one day in particular. I can remember a lot of it. I can remember one day in particular where, like, I had this, I guess, download or whatever people call it, that Jesus was a fraud. And I was like, whoa, like Jesus could be like an imposter, but like it wasn't. It ended up not being like Jesus, like the real Jesus was the imposter, but what everybody says about him is false. And I never really considered that. I never really considered that we had been lied to by Paul, or that we had been manipulated by the people who canonized the text, and that certain things have been left out on purpose. I had never considered any of that. So I started reading books, and this is all the while my depression was setting in. I was like really scared of that. I'm like, why do I feel this way? And then your brain is desperately trying to come up with an explanation for why you feel the way you do. So ended up turning against myself because I didn't yet see the systems outside of me that had led to this situation, the systems of control like religion that had filled me with so much shame and fear to begin with, that I would ever consider myself like worthy or deserving of hell. And I beat myself up so much because, I mean, things were nasty during the divorce. I had so much built up resentment, and I had trained myself so well to hide the way I felt that and cannabis helped with this, like it helps you express yourself in a way that I wasn't before. And I was able to say all the things that I hadn't said for the last 7, 8 years of marriage. And people thought I had bipolar disorder. I got diagnosed with that multiple times because I was just exploding at the seams with emotion that I had been suppressing. It's not like you suppress it and it goes away. It stays in your body and it eventually comes out. And it's a natural reaction to a toxic environment. And it's not pathology. It's not indication of some mental illness that's been dormant. And the ridiculous explanations I was getting from doctors who thought they knew me better than I knew myself. And that doesn't mean I knew myself very well at the time at all, but the opportunity that I got out of that 2.5 years of depression that followed was full of, there's so much in it. And I know that I went through it to be able to speak about it, to be able to say like, hey, if you're feeling depressed, it's not your fault. It's not just your thoughts. You don't just need to do more meditation, yoga, and breath work, because if your brain doesn't have what it needs to function properly, it's not going to. If there's something in it that's not supposed to be there, it's not going to function properly. Like, you have to take care of your brain. And if you take care of your brain and your body and bring it all back into harmony, your thoughts actually automatically get better. Imagine that. Imagine that we're an actual being and we can bring ourselves back into balance and we feel better. It's just not something that we're taught. We're taught that if we feel badly, we need to take this pill, or we need to take that pill, or we need to take a combination of pills, or we need to go to therapy and talk about it. Like, that's not getting to the root cause of anything. And I ultimately knew that, but I still felt hopeless for a long time because was blaming myself and not understanding everything that had been happening outside of me. And so it's been a very gradual process that has led me to where I am now, which is being able to confidently speak out about how I feel about Christianity and what the flaws are in it, and looking into the history of it. And I was scared of telling my dad for a while. It was through a post on my Facebook a couple of years ago where I wrote that I was leaving Christianity, and the photo I posted was of me with my back turned. It was so dramatic, but it was well thought out, well written, where I just called out the flaws. Like, I hadn't even arrived at the it hadn't dawned on me yet how absurd it is that people genuinely believe that God desires and requires blood. Like, no, like, people have been doing that forever. And now I understand that Jesus was trying to. There's a documentary called Christspiracy. I don't know if you've seen it or heard of it, but people on my Instagram and TikTok have been recommending it to me. So I finally watched it last week, where he exposes the massive industry that was sacrifice, that the church at the time, made up of the Pharisees, Sadducees, Sanhedrin, whatever you want to call them, I just call them the church, was telling people that they were sinners, they needed to sacrifice, they needed to bring in their sacrifices, their best lambs, their best animals. And so, like, tons of people, thousands and thousands of people were bringing their animals in to the temple, a massive marketplace, and people think that Jesus was flipping tables over the money changers. It was this. Everybody's bringing in their sacrifices, and then the clergy, the church, was then cutting up the sacrifices and selling the meat back to them. It was a scam. They were scamming people to make money. And that was the whole reason they were pushing sacrifices so much at that time. Of course, sacrifice has been going on for centuries, eons, millennia, in all different cultures, where we've been convinced that they want our blood, right? And maybe there is a demiurge. Maybe there is a demiurge that desires it. And I think about that in terms of the Old Testament. Like, is that the real God? Did God really say go into this village and slaughter everyone, including all the women and children? Probably not. Like, it was either demiurge or somebody just wrote that down about God. Everybody's saying, even today, like, what's happening in Israel, like, oh, it's just God's will. God wants Israel to have that land. And everybody's, for centuries, millennia, have been hiding behind God It's no different now. It was no different then. And I think part of Jesus' teaching message mission was not to go around and tell everybody, hey, you got to believe in me, so you go to heaven. Like, that's not the good news. The good news is none of this shit's real. Like, none of the stuff that they're telling you about who you are, like, you're a dirty, rotten sinner. You got to sacrifice your animals. You got to do all this stuff, obey the church, give your money to church. None of that stuff is real. They're holding you prisoner, and they're not letting you in on the reality of who you are. And that is a piece of the God consciousness. It's all within you. It's not out there. It's not in church. You don't have to go through all these rituals to make yourself worthy of it. That's the real good news, is that God is love, and that's not any of the stuff you've been told he is. And it's just so funny to see that Christianity is taking up that same shtick, that same spiel, with requiring all of these things, requiring certain beliefs, prayers, rituals like baptism to make you clean and make you worthy in the eyes of God. It's insane to me. So that's kind of where I ended up.
So what's interesting, we end up in a very similar place, and I think I want to speak to, because some of my circle, I want to speak to. I would like to play the Steel Man, if you don't mind, to try to see how you respond to some of the things that I have to respond to, because I think fundamentally we have a lot of, I call it like universal wisdom, and it's kind of like nobody, I don't know, you read a bunch of books and then it kind of came. The only book I've been reading is the Bible, and it came to me. Like, it just came to me. It's like, wait a minute. Everything I've been asking that I can't have answers for is like, it's just because it's just like, it's all in there. For me, it's all in there. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to come.
It is in there.
Yeah. So it's interesting. But it's like, it's wild when you go read it with people that come to the text knowing what they already want the text to say. There's no telling them there is no room for nuance. There's no room for curiosity. It's like, what do you mean heaven might be now? It's like, well, I don't know. He talks about heaven 30 times in John. 25 of them seem now. 5 may seem later, and 5 are indiscriminate. You do what you will with that, but I think there's some form of the good life. Anyway, I don't want to get into that. Sorry, we don't care about Kevin's philosophy. But I'd like to say I'd like to steal man, because I think what we run the risk of right here is like 2 deconstructionalists that are waging a dangerous, heretical, false prophet campaign to go bring people away from Jesus, which I don't think is but anyway, so I want to do that. And then I want to just dig into what you want. I think the one statement, like, this whole idea, and I assume we agree on this. I don't know what theology we're subscribing to, but this idea of objective truth, that we can only witness through our subjective realities. What a futile game, right? That doesn't even make sense, to say that I have the truth and my truth is the only truth. And like, if you don't see it the way that I see it, you're going out. That's crazy. But what the heck was I going to say? Like, oh, what do you want? And I didn't study. I try, like, I even do this when I'm interviewing people for my business. It's like, I don't like to study the resume. I just want to get to know you. I want to vibe check it. So I saw some of your stuff and I'm like, yeah, we're probably kindred on a lot. But like, I think you have a coaching platform. I understand you're doing the van life thing. I think the thing that I'd love, like, all that to say, let me get to the point, Kevin. What the hell is he saying? By its fruit, you can judge it, right? We can't argue theology. You might believe in the Eucharist. You might be in the crucifixion. Like, whatever sign you like to worship, God bless you. Like, you and I agree, like, love is at the epicenter of everything. It solves all things. Its power defeats depression. Its power we can't even prescribe because it's unlimited. That's what infinity is. Anyway, I assume we agree on that. But like, what is it that, like, you've got a solid following. You're obviously emitting a voice into the world with intention. You care about something. What is it that you want people, having come to know Caitlin Pyle, what is it that you want them to walk away with? Or what is your charge? Or where is your fruits? Or what is your treasure, right? What is the rest? You're 38. What is the rest of your next however many years on this earth? Like, what does that look like for you? Do you know?
I preach freedom, ultimately, and I think that I follow in the footsteps of Jesus when I do that. I preach fearlessness, which is also something that Jesus preached. I think he wanted followers and not worshipers. I think that it's definitely not my goal to turn people away from Jesus. It's more of my goal to help people understand what Jesus was actually doing. And what you said about it all being in the Bible is absolutely true. If you read any of the Gospels, and I don't remember which one is the most specific, but it is very clear that he was murdered. he was murdered. And the Christians will cherry pick certain verses where it says, "This is my body and my blood poured out for the forgiveness of sins." And they assume that means there was some kind of secret covenant that Jesus was meant to be the ultimate blood sacrifice to appease the angry God that couldn't look upon us without, us paying
Yeah.
and being punished for our sins. And he took that
It's hard.
punishment and all these
It's
things.
it's hard to
It's
listen
so
to.
convoluted. It
It's so
is.
hard to listen. It's like, what do we do? I don't understand why everybody overlooks that though. Like, does that make sense? But sorry, carry on.
But
Freedom.
it wasn't
Sorry.
until I read the Bible, and this is again me not me condoning the use of cannabis, but I read the Bible high once, and I read the Gospels, and I was like so drawn in, like focus was like crystal clear, and I was so drawn in. It was like the words meant something different, but the words were always the same. It was me who had changed, and I can still read the words the same way today. So I know it wasn't just the weed. It was just like God can use anything, is my belief too. Like
I, dude,
to help.
I'm sorry. I have to. I can see the headlines now from like, and you know who you are when you listen, but it's like, oh, did you hear who Kevin had on? This pot smoking divorced woman. Like, it's like, God dang it. Yeah. Can you see her heart? Would you just try to see her heart? Like, and that's the thing that I'm like, it's fun for me to talk to you because I can defend you. It's like, I'm going into these places and it's like, damn, man, like I'm good with your belief. Like, I wish you would just be good. Can you just be good with mine? Like, I got called out in my own Bible study the other day, in my own Bible study, because I said the word bastard and I was talking about Jesus. Like, look at him being a sarcastic bastard. And the guy was like, you shouldn't say that. And I'm like, I don't think he cares, bro. I know that you
Doesn't.
think that it was okay to like ruin the tone of the whole meeting by like correcting me for the sake of right. It's like, dude, come on. Anyway, and I shouldn't have said it. I should be more, but I don't think Jesus, I believe Jesus would probably be cussing. He would not be concerned with how we use our tongue. It's like, whatever. But I can see the headline now of the Christians, and it's so unfortunate. But we're probably doing the same thing. I shouldn't be talking crap about them. But anyway, yeah. So get back to your like, who do you want to break out? Like, who are you speaking to? Like, who is your I'm big on like legacy statements. So I'm like, when I talk to like, particularly the people that are working for me, is like, and this is important, right? This is something that gets overlooked in the church. And like, first word spoken in John, what do you want, right? Like Jesus says, what do you want? Was he intentional with those words, or is that what do you want? So I'm just interested like in this, the next 10 years of your life, do you have like a legacy statement that you're running after? Is it like, do you have, obviously, we've found peace and we don't have to strive, but what, like when you say I'm preaching freedom, fearlessness, he wanted followers, not worshipers. Like if we come to follow Caitlin, therefore Jesus in the way that she wants us to, if women are to follow you, men are to follow you, do you know what you want that fruit to be? And it's okay if you don't. I don't know. That's a hard question.
Yeah, well, I love what you said. You mentioned about how the first thing in the book of John that Jesus said is, "What do you want?" And if that connects straight to freedom, because everybody wants freedom. Everybody wants freedom. Nobody wants to be oppressed. Nobody wants to be a slave. Nobody wants to be controlled. It's not our natural state. Our natural state is peace and freedom and love. So the more I can help people get what they want, the better. And the more I can show them that it's not through me, it's not through Jesus. Jesus is not going to save you just because you believe in him. You got to learn what Jesus was talking about. You got to follow in his footsteps. And if I can translate that to make it easier for people, then that's great. That's what I'm trying to do, is to help people understand that to get what you want, you've got to change your actions. And to change your actions, you've got to change your thoughts, because your thoughts create emotions and your emotions drive your actions. So what are you believing? And I just see how, if you believe you're a sinner and you believe that we're not of this earth and this is not our home, this is like the real world is someplace else. Like we're not going to be really alive till we get to heaven, and that's like destroying people, and it's actually not helping people, and it's stunting their growth, it's stunting their development, and it's keeping them from being all of who they're actually meant to be, which is free people who are alive and vibrant and creative. And it's so funny. I always mention this on my lives, and I haven't done a video on it yet, but in the Gospel of Thomas, which was left out of the Bible, they say it's Gnosticism. Jesus says, if you bring out what's within you, if you don't bring out what's within you, it will destroy you. And so you look around at people who are in victim mode, they're in victim energy, and they believe that they're being persecuted. They believe they're sinners. They believe that everyone hates them, or, Israel controls the US. And all those things might be true, but how does that make anything that's going on inside of you other people's fault? Like, you got to take responsibility. You might be a victim of something, but do you want to live there, or you want to do something with it? Like, imagine if I'd never gone off the couch and I was still on the couch dealing with and never done anything different, never kept or stopped seeking. I think that's where the danger of modern Christianity is that once you find it, you think you've found all that matters, and you don't continue looking, you don't continue growing, you don't continue seeking, and you end up becoming a totally different type of mental prison. And you convince yourself that you're free because you've found the truth, and that, but you're convincing yourself to be, you're lying to yourself. I think you're lying to yourself and saying, like, I'm a sinner. I'm nothing but for Jesus. And what frequency are those words? It's not creative energy. That's not love energy. That's victim energy. I was born sinful. I can't trust my heart. We're taught not to trust ourselves in Christianity largely. I can't speak for all 45,000 denominations, but the one that I came from teaches you that you cannot trust yourself, and you're not supposed to love yourself, even though love your neighbor as yourself. Like, how can you love your neighbor if you don't love yourself? It just makes no sense. Like, that was a big catalyst too, was realizing, like, wait, we're actually supposed to love ourselves, and we can't love our neighbors if we don't love ourselves. So we have to start at home. All change starts from within. So it's not about waiting for a Jesus to tell us what to do, not about waiting for a president or a church or some other leader to come and tell you what to do. That's part of the slave mentality of, like, waiting for a master. And to really set ourselves free, we have to look within and see that we are creating the reality that's around us. The reality that's around us has to respond to what's within us. It's not the things around you that are changing, it's you who's changing. It's like when the Bible started to make sense to me for the first time, it was me who had changed, not the words. So when people say, oh, the Bible is clear, it's like, that's your interpretation. And people understand that there are many different interpretations based on who's doing the interpreting.
That's the one that gets me, is the intolerance of any interpretation that's not their own. That's the one that, and like, I just don't understand how we got so self-righteous, and how we're so self-righteous and don't identify with the Pharisees. It's weird to me. And I was there for 13 years and I didn't have quite the story you did. I enjoyed it. Like, I'd say the day I met Jesus Christ in the Christian traditional fundamentalist, that was a huge day for me. The day I realized that Jesus was way bigger than the church, 10 to 100 times, like 10 to 100 times, like the freedom. And you talk about freedom, it's like, the ability to move and live, and like, and you bring up your ego, and I'd love to explore that with you. But like, for me, it like, and I don't mean to, this is, and I don't want to be self-righteous here, but I could never go back. Like, I'm willing to be curious and remain in a space where I'm like, yeah, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe the old way is better. That made no sense was, it was freeing. I think it's freeing. Like, I think a fundamental faith is like a belief in something bigger than yourself has to be good for the human. I think that's generally a good thing, even if it maybe isn't, I don't remember the term you used, but if it's a guilt-ridden play, it's like still believing in something bigger than self is, I think, important. But yeah, I couldn't go back. I guess my question for you, and I'm interested because I think you're further along. Well, further along in the media matrix, which is something I thought I could do this. I really thought I could do this from the shadows. I thought I could like figure out a way to put goodness into the world without having to go on and be in. And I have to give that up. So here we are. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But this voice is so important. I think the voice that you're preaching and the voice of like, I like the word human flourishing is something I've been using. Is like, what does it look like for human flourishing? And does God condemn this as a miserable existence, a sinful existence, or does he call us to life and life to the full? And I'm like, F it. If the interpretation could go either way, I'm going to believe in the better one. Why? I just don't know why we wouldn't. Like, let's just hope for that. Even if maybe whatever. If it gets better when we die, great. God bless. But how do we exist? And I don't know if you listened to any of our stuff yet, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But the one I'd love you to listen to is it's Jack, Matt, and I. And I don't know, I'll send you the episode number. But like, I'm exploring how if ideological capture, if we can agree that ideological capture is dangerous, fundamentally, it's dangerous to the human. It is limiting of the all all powerful curiosity, the expansive thought, the internal greatness, the wonder, the beautiful imagination that we had, the childlike posture that he tells us to take, right? Ideology ruins that. It's like, what are we, and how do we remain embracing of our peers, right? So it's easy for you and I to sit in this space and talk crap, and I don't think you ever did that, but like we would be, if we speak about the old ideology where we came from, we're going to be very diminishing of them, and I want to be very loving of them. How do we remain in a posture of invitational towards all, and not falling trap and victim to the very trap that they have, is as our ideology is right? And I think my thing is there's I suspect that you'll agree with this. There's no right answers. We can't know. We can only explore and keep exploring, and let God reveal himself to us, right? And the why, how do we, is there a way that can not be hostile to people? Because it's very hot. It's amazing. Some of my best thinkers and brilliant people, like women running billion-dollar organizations that I come to cherish and ask questions, the door is in my face when I'm like, I just don't know if heaven is reserved for people that believe rightly and only those that believe in the crucifixion. Like, I don't know what that, I think God's bigger than that. It's like, hey dude, I'm not talking to you. Like we're not having a conversation. I'm like, damn, bro. Like, what about the love of Christ? Like, you don't even want to see me if I'm at, and so I guess my question is for you is that door has been perpetually, and I'm like a stupid dog. Like, I just keep coming back for more. It's like, I got, and let me caveat, why is it important is, we don't need another church. We don't need the 450,990. We don't need the 990th sect, right? We don't need to build. And it's like, so for me, this whole thing is like, how do we start building bridges across the buildings, right? How do these build? And these are bridges of love that says, hey, like everything we want in our discourse, we need to exhibit in our religion. And I believe it sounds like this. Caitlin, I see your point. I respect and cherish your perspective. I don't take it, but it's cool for you. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. That's okay for us. And like, so I guess I feel like the opportunity of this discovery, this inquiry, what we've come to find and know that once you're in it, you can see the others around you. Like, oh, they get it. They get it. And it's like, we don't have an ideology. We don't want an ideology, but like, it's those of us that have found I don't want to sound so arrogant to be like, the beautiful in the human existence, like the wonderful, like it's like every day's a gift. Like, I don't know what heaven is, but today is it, right? And like, you can do that in hard times, you can do that in good times, and it's like, that's not preached at church, but like, so how do we exist in a space that doesn't sound antagonistic towards our peers, our brothers and sisters that are like, and I find beauty in the Christian faith. I'm not trying to deconstruct it for the sake of eradicating it. I'm saying the world exists at war with itself so long as we are embedded in ideological capture. And no, yours isn't better than anybody else's. No, mine is not better than yours. But it's like, so anyway, I don't know if you've thought about that at all. I'm probably a little too global and should just deal with the 10 that he feeds me and love them well. But I'm like, I think it's a really perilous state. So please enlighten us, Miss Caitlin.
Yeah, so I think about consciousness. I think about how many people exist in a victim or what I call the fighter energy zones. And it's basically a way of looking at the world. It's a lens through which you look at the world, and it affects your energy. So it's right or wrong, black and white, labels, victim, perpetrator mentality, and it's everywhere, and it's not anyone's fault. It's part of the system that we're in that convinces us that that's just the way things are, and most people don't understand that there are other levels to consciousness within this very reality, and that we can create those with our thoughts. And we don't realize that we have that power because, of course, the books of the Bible that didn't make it into the Bible, that would reveal that to us, I think that they were left out on purpose. So that keeps us in the dark. And the highest level of consciousness is unity and love. It's where our creativity is. It's where there is no us versus them. It's just all that is. And there's only one consciousness, and we're all part of that consciousness. And I think what helps me when I do, which it's inevitable, and it can get under my skin, it can ruffle my feathers when a Christian who used to be me, I used to probably argue that same stuff to people, not as vehemently. I can't pronounce that word. not as arduously, yeah, not as passionately necessarily as some of the Christians that come in my comments and tell me that I'm wrong, but I understand that they are me and I am them, and time doesn't exist. There's only a now, and we're all on our own pathway. Like the flowers in the garden bloom at different rates. Different flowers bloom at different times. Some bloom annually, some bloom every week, some bloom and die quickly. Like we're all on a different path. So keeping in mind that unity is the only reality, that love is the only reality, can help me stay grounded when I do get angry, because it's inevitable, right? But at the same time, Jesus got angry. People told Jesus that he was doing the work of the devil. And I find solace in that too. It's like, I was scared of it at first. I haven't been speaking about Christianity that long. I've been holding myself back for a long time. My TikTok channel started with speaking about mental health, but the same thing would happen. What credibility do you have? Like, you don't have a degree, you're not a doctor. Like, yeah, but I healed what doctors couldn't. Like, like knowing that wisdom comes through experience and not through memorizing, and not through repeating what I've been told by somebody else, but through things that I've lived and understood, and also knowing that the truth resonates. The truth is very powerful and it always prevails. So understanding that it's not my responsibility to fix everything either. And I had to tell myself this morning, because there was somebody arguing about how about Israel, and how we need to stand with a Christian who stands with Israel because the Bible says so, and it doesn't matter that they're just people wearing an Israel T-shirt and pretending to be Israel. It doesn't matter to them. They don't see that. And I was like, gosh, like, what if I'm the one who has to like tell them that they're just pretending to be Jewish so they can take over? And it's not my responsibility. I don't have to fix everything. I don't have to correct everyone. Really, it's about leading by example and being calm and cool and collected and living in the vibration and the reality of peace, because I think that's our natural state. I think most of us have been trained to be in fight or flight, and it's very normal, but it's not healthy. It's not supposed to be like that. But it's very beneficial to those in power that we are in fight or flight, because then we're easy to control. It's easy for them to be like, the world's running out of resources. We got to take away more of your freedom. You're in danger. The sky is falling, right? It's just that kind of psychology over and over that keeps people in fight or flight, because then we'll do whatever they want. And it just takes away more of our freedom and our peace, because we need peace. We need to, like, creativity doesn't come out of chaos. It has to come out of calm and clarity. So that's why I don't like to make decisions when I'm angry. I don't like to make decisions when I'm afraid. I don't make decisions out of fear, because fear is never the truth. So even though we can't know the entirety of reality, we can't know the truth absolutely, we definitely see glimpses of it, and we know that it resonates. We know that um, fear isn't the truth, that it's only an illusion. We know that love is the only reality, that we know that scarcity isn't real. We know that abundance is the only reality. We can only look around. And I actually saw a piece of art yesterday. It was video art. It was on Instagram. It was a reel of an artist who had brought out a bunch of old TVs into this beautiful lakeside setting. Maybe you've seen it. And it was facing the TVs. It was like a wall of TVs facing the TVs, and the lake was pristine. It was calm, no ripples. It was a gorgeous setting, but this person was just like folded in on themselves, surrounded by TVs with headlines that were like, um, "You're in danger." Whatever the headlines were, they're on different languages even. That's exactly the picture of society we have today, and everybody's coming from a version of that, because that's the matrix, that's the trap that has worked very well for so many of us. And now we're going through this awakening period where the consciousness not only of the earth is expanding and evolving and moving to even the next level. You've maybe heard people talk about the earth moving from 3D consciousness to 5D 4D consciousness, which is the consciousness of love. That's happening to people too. And for some of us, it's been very sudden. Like, I feel like I went through a pretty sudden awakening where I was like one person one day and awake the next. I had this sensation that I was awake, and it felt like I had woken up from a really bad dream, that like I was just stuck in an empty world. And everybody's kind of coming from a version of that. And so when we're online and we're having conversations, when we're in person having conversations, there's still people who believe that's the reality. There's still people who believe that what they're telling us on TV is real. What they're telling us from the pulpit is real. And there's people still who are still learning, and we're all still learning. But there's people who aren't learning at all at the same time. And understanding that we're all just versions of each other at some point in time and space, I think is really helpful to staying grounded and not being I think they call it entrainment, where your energy can be affected by others in that same energy. So if you're in a vacuum or in a echo chamber of people who are angry, you can become angry. So it's super important to surround yourself with people who are vibrating higher at the same time. It doesn't mean that you can't approach people who are angry to in an observer perspective, to observe their anger, observe their and understand their beliefs, and remind yourself where they're coming from. Compose arguments that are calm and kind. I try to always be kind in my content. It doesn't mean it's not going to come across, a little bit fiery with some absurdity layered in of, who's demanding this payment? Who are we paying this debt to? Like, who created this system? And like asking questions that make people uncomfortable. I mean, people might hate it, but that doesn't make it hate speech, right? Uncomfortable conversations is not me bullying Christians. Making people uncomfortable, making Christians uncomfortable is how we grow. You cannot grow in a comfort zone. So I think that's part of it too. And Jesus yelled at people. Jesus yelled at people. He called the Pharisees vipers. When he was in the temple, he called them a den of thieves. He was honest. I think honesty and kindness, and it is love. We can't lie to people just to make them comfortable. That's not love either. So there certainly is a balance in that. We're not, you know, there's toxic positivity, there's spiritual bypassing, where there's like everything is light and love. It's like you can acknowledge the false realities um, without being in them, and you can present alternative viewpoints from a place of peace and not aggression. It's like it doesn't bother me at all. Like I think you can, and maybe this is part of the old Christian mentality too, of if most of the world is going to hell, why aren't more Christians freaking out about it? Like, if they really did love people the way that Jesus loved people, why aren't they freaking out about it? Like, there are some people who are, but I think it's indicative of there are a lot of people wrestling with this, but they're afraid to look at it. And I was like that in my marriage. I was afraid to actually look at my feelings, have a conversation with myself, and say, like, this doesn't make sense. I'm not happy like this. Um, I don't like the way this makes me feel. I feel ashamed. And I think I did have that conversation with myself about Christianity at one point. I was like, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel right. I think, again, I can't pinpoint one day where it was like everything made sense. It was more of a process of that deconstruction. It's not overnight. It's like building a house doesn't take a day, neither does deconstructing from a long time of being immersed in something. But I think keeping perspective, and it's really always about widening that lens away from like, I'm a victim of Christianity, I'm a victim of all these people lying about Jesus and being angry about it. You go through those phases. It's like the phases of grief. Like, you have to grieve in a way your past and the version of yourself that you were. And I went through that. It was a big part of my depression cycle. Was like, I can't believe that I fell for it. Like, I can't believe I fell. I thought everything on TV was real. Like, I can't believe I was that stupid, because I'd always thought of myself as very smart. So there's a lot of humility and self-compassion involved, in not hating that past version of yourself who was just doing the best that they could with what they had. And that's what ultimately Christians who are not deconstructing, Christians who are very happy in their religion and dogma, they're happy there. And that's okay. That's okay, because we're all one. And I think ultimately all roads lead back to source anyway. And we're all here to receive different lessons. I think Earth is a school in many ways, that we're here to learn, and we're here to teach what we learn, and we're here to learn some more, and it never stops, and it can be fun. Like, really, that's what creative energy is, like that upper echelon of energy. So down here is victim and fighting and shame and apathy, but up here is love, unity, fun, flow, creativity. And the more that you can remind yourself that that's reality and everything else is a distortion of that reality, the better life can get. And it's true that life can continue getting better and better and better, but it doesn't seem like that when we're locked in. I'm preaching to myself right now too, because you can get locked into those chambers, especially on social media, where your algorithm is just feeding you, it constructs a reality as you continue to watch these videos about conflicts and Charlie Kirk and everything that's going on and people's opinions about it and people being angry at so and so. It's like you can convince yourself that that's reality and people are making decisions based on those realities. Like, the world sucks. Like, I'm not going to bring any kids into this world, or like people like criticize people who are bringing kids into the world because, like, why would you do that? I'm like, well, because my life is great. Like, I've created a life for myself that I love, and that changes everything.
That brings up a question. Where is the van and where does the van go? Not to disclose your location in case anybody comes to
Well,
whack
I'm
you.
leaving tomorrow, so I
But
reckon you probably will post it after. I am in Homolovi State Park in northern Arizona, and we're on former Hopi land, the Native American Hopis. We're gonna go explore. My partner and I've been calling him my partner, but we're now engaged. We've been engaged for about 2 weeks now, and
I saw that.
yeah, thank you so
Congratulations,
much.
by the
We're
way.
excited. He's a van lifer too. We met online. Through, I don't think it was a coincidence. Like, I genuinely believe when you're living your best life and you're really plugged in and you're having fun and you're just flowing and being in the present moment as much as possible, that that energy that you embody then becomes magnetic to the energy that's meant to be with you. And that's exactly what happened with me and Edward, that we attracted each other through like living our best lives and being true to who we are. And ultimately, I mean, you talk about depression and anxiety is fear about the future most often, and you can't be happy when you're in the future because it doesn't exist. And depression is being stuck in the past, and that's also not being present, because the only way you can actually be happy is being present and right now. And so the more that we get caught up in going to heaven or going to hell or worrying about what somebody else is doing, worry about anything really, then we're not present. And that's something I've had to teach myself over the years, is quieting my mind and not always having something in front of my eyes, whether it's a book or a movie or a TikTok video or whatever, or some conversation. Like, I've been watching some lectures on YouTube and they're really interesting, but ultimately, the more you put it into your mind without quieting your mind, your ego can kind of take over, and you just find yourself in that flurry of energy that doesn't feel calm. And you kind of forget that you're here to experience reality, and that you're a soul living in a body having an experience. And in so many ways, you could say that none of this is real, right? In so many ways, you could say that none of this is actually real. It's a projection, and we all have different projections based on our thoughts and our beliefs about what reality is and about who we are. And people take actions based on those beliefs. And so if you understand how people are all creating and constructing their own realities, it's a lot easier to have compassion when their reality doesn't match with yours.
Have you given much thought to any of, or if there is any danger to, I'm going to call it your ministry or your, like, is there, and I was actually trying to think of, I'm like going to make a crappy steel man because like but is there anything that you would dignify? And I'm kind of like, I want to give you the chance to answer to, I can almost, I feel like I can read the text for what a Christian's going to say when they listen to this. And I'm going to say that, and then I want to give you the chance to answer that. But before we do that, just like, I think a lot of the people from the fundamental, I'm going to call it the fundamental Christian, are going to say that's really dangerous. What you're saying is dangerous. Have you given any thought to that, or how, like,
Yeah, it's
speak to it,
dangerous
please?
in their minds because they believe that anything that's different from what they've been taught is deception. and the that it leads to hell, and that you're going to have to pay for the crimes of deceiving people away from the truth. It's based on Pollyanity. It's based on what Paul wrote in his letters, like, don't let anybody tell you any different, even though he was saying many things different from what Jesus was saying. And it's fear-based ultimately.
It's so funny because, sorry to cut you off, but it's so funny because like I'm very critical, and I think this is and for those that are listening that are just going to dismiss, and I'll say it, it's going to sound something like this girl was a widow, she never had kids, so she's never happy, she got fired from her job, she's a pot smoking, she's lost and broken, and it's like, yeah, and we didn't listen to, and I feel like it's like, and we didn't want to bother listening to the like real version of Christ that's in her life that speaks to the love that it's all he ministered, right? And so anyway, I can go to bat for you because I'm like, yeah. And I think what's powerful about like the conclusions is like we didn't learn them from man. They revealed themselves through us. And like I think your journey is different than my journey. And there was no orthodoxy. It's so true that it can't be denied, right? And so it's like, what do you mean? It's like, I don't know what the hell happened in the Council of Nicaea, but it doesn't matter to me or to you, right? And so anyway, I don't want to get into that. I don't want to argue. That's where I get it. I'm like ready to have that fight. I don't love having that fight, mostly because like the people that want to have that fight can't exist in that fight without getting butthurt. Like it hurts them. Like it's very, and I don't ever want to be diminishing of them. And so those of you that are listening, like there's a great conversation for us to explore together. When you tolerate our side of that exploration, we tolerate yours. So that's what I would say is like, it's you guys, like if you sit in an argument, there's a tolerant person and an intolerant one. Who sounds more like Jesus and who sounds more like a Pharisee? Like listen loudly, like listen really loudly. But anyway, it's interesting though, because I call it universal wisdom. It just keeps revealing itself. I see this nugget. It's like, oh yeah, that good. But Pauline, is it, you said you were talking about the Pauline Gospels. It's like, there's not much alignment between his ministry and Jesus's. Have you come to that conclusion as well? He is the father of self-righteous religion. No, like, is that, do you and I see that the same? I just, from your reference, it's funny because everybody's getting mad at me because I'm like, I just don't know about that Paul guy. I think he did a lot of really good stuff, but I also think he fathered in self-righteous religion. Like he brought the Pharisee way to Christianity. I mean, that's not even a suspected thing. That's true. He came from that faith and brought that version of faith. And then now we sit on the pulpit and say, believe rightly, and you will be blessed. It's like, F all that. So anyway, is that fair to say we would read Paul the same? I think you might even be harder on him than me. I think there's a lot of good to him.
Ultimately,
there's also a lot of contradiction.
Did have this vision, right? Which Joseph Smith also had a vision. If he did meet Jesus in this vision, that was his experience. But for that to be turned into Holy Scripture is completely misguided. He had his opinions. Like women should be quiet in church is what I always think of. Like, really, that's what God thinks, or is that really what Paul thought? Right? And that's always been my argument. Not always, of course, but in most recent times of doing this work is the Bible is not the holy, inerrant word. The Bible is not holy. The Bible is not a Christian book. The Bible is not the inerrant, ineffable word of God. People like to conflate the Bible with the word, right? In the beginning was the word. The word for word in, I think the original Greek is logos, which means expression. It doesn't mean Bible. So I think
I'm not cringing. So many, if we didn't lose them before, everybody just hung up. Everybody, and it's okay. It's good. I mean, it's like, where did that come from? But now you say that it's not the infallible word, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're going to run up tight on time, and there's so much I want to extract. It's not the infallible, perfect word of God, but would you still say that it's good, or
I think it's
you wouldn't?
Useful. I think it shows you a picture of humanity and the projections of God that we've had across time. It gives us a lot of insight into culture and how people thought at the time. I think if Jesus were around now and the way that he was around then, that the people who profess to follow him now would probably spit in his face, ignore him, take him to the loony bin, all these different things. They would kill him, or just lock him away in the mental hospital for saying the things that he said, because it's ultimately what's happening to those of us who are saying the things now. We've translated a lot of the things, a lot of the message, a lot of the truth to a more non-dogmatic way of seeing it. And we're not threatening anybody with hell if they don't believe it. And it's like, it's the power of belief. But I don't know if you've heard of Aaron Abkey, who speaks about this all the time. He's a former pastor's kid. He had this whole presentation called the Gospel Conspiracy, which goes into depth on how Paul kind of subverted the message of Jesus and how he preaches something totally different. Doesn't mean he actually very rarely mentions the things that Jesus taught. Doesn't mean that he doesn't say anything good about things like the renewing of the mind, right? He talks about the renewing of the mind in Romans. There's useful things in his letters, but ultimately there's so much trauma that came from killing as many people as he did when he was Saul, and being a Pharisee, and the reckoning that comes with the realization that you were living your life uh, in a for falsehood for so long, and there's a lot of deconstruction that had to happen. And I think he started writing those letters like before he had done all that work. It's just my personal opinion. Obviously we can't prove that, but all we have are his letters, and they've been canonized into Holy Scripture, and his words became God's words. And it's just false. It's just false that it comes down to, well, it's in the Bible, then it must be what God thinks because God wrote the Bible. And so many people think God wrote the Bible. And it's like we're reducing the Bible down to a book, or we're reducing God down to a book. That's insulting. We're worshiping a book. A lot of Christians worship the Bible.
Wes Huff is like the apologetic. He was on Joe Rogan. He's like I think he's the next most famous Christian to Charlie Kirk. Maybe I don't know if that's true. Like he has the truth, right? He's an apologetics, like super good. I mean, I think he's got a great heart, but they had a debate, and I'm a little arrogant about certain things. I don't know much, but I feel like I was built to facilitate those conversations. And I would just love to facilitate the Aaron conversation in the West, because I think I could do it. It's really hard in a debate. The better debater, the louder, the more abrasive, like the best points don't get reached. And like facilitation of that is an art that I don't think anybody's got. And I've been, this whole thing for me was studying how to bring people together. And here we are. I started with abortion. I started with gun laws. And I was like, let's just talk about heaven inside. Because I figured it'd be easier if we stayed on hollow ground, right? We're all Christians. And boy, was I wrong. Like I totally blew that. And it's like a 2-year debate. And it's like, we didn't land in the place that I thought we could land, which is I see you, I respect you. It's like, no, if you're saying heaven's here now, you're going to hell. So anyway, I guess the last thing, and I got to wrap up, and I'm sorry to cut it short. And anytime you want to come back, because I'd love to hear about the band, the whole, like, you've obviously deconstructed there's so much more to you than we got to today. So thanks for being here. But I just want to be clear to draw the distinction of, like, I think a lot, I want to be favorable to you and give, your critics, which are going to be many. I know them because they're my critics as well. And that there's no shortage of them if you're challenging things. Are you out to take people out of the church? Are you, like there's a, this deconstructionalist tone is threatening, right? Even though it doesn't mean to be. It's like a message of love. It's a message of love that can't be heard as love because it appears as hostile. And I can paint that picture for you, how that gets auto-calibrated in a human. Assuming we can't decalibrate it right now, is the ministry for people in church that are unhappy just to show you a new way of Christ? And I guess the question would be, how do you situate your relationship with Jesus? And you said one thing that I don't know, you said it's not through Jesus. So how do you square that? Don't placate to anybody. I just want to make sure I give you the chance to say, people are going to think what they're going to think, right? But I want to give it to the horse's mouth to say it how you see it.
So a lot of Christians like to quote the verse John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through me. Yeah.
That's the one. That's most of you. Keep going. Sorry.
How Jesus spoke in parables, Jesus spoke in metaphor, Jesus could also spoke in riddle-like language. Like, I am is the great I am. Who is I am? God. And God is love. I am the way. Love is the way. God is the way. Love is the way. Love is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through love. The maths, if you're looking at who I am is, if you think about a riddle, I am black, white, red all over. What is that? A newspaper. Who am I? A newspaper, right? So we don't know. But we do know that Christians have taken that literally when Jesus did not speak literally in many ways, and many times that he spoke, he wasn't actually speaking literally. So it's quite possible that that verse wasn't meant to be taken or wasn't translated in the way that it was actually meant. There's a lot lost in translation. It's been a giant telephone game. That was a huge part of my deconstruction too, was realizing that, whoa, this has been passed down and translated and interpreted in so many different ways that the meaning, the original meaning, could have been seriously muddled and lost. And but for me, the math, when you think about I am being God and God being love, that those things are one and the same. So you come to the Father through love. How is that wrong? The Christians are never able to prove me wrong when I say that, but they really hang on to Jesus having said that and it being through Jesus. What did Jesus represent? What was Jesus speaking about? He was speaking about love. He was speaking about freedom. He was speaking about mercy and not sacrifice. And so I think what Christianity has done is turn Jesus, and that's what Paul did ultimately, and they followed Paul. Most Christians followed Paul and not Jesus. That Jesus has become the sacrifice, that it's through believing in this sacrifice, which isn't love at all. And he makes that very clear in the parable of prodigal son, when the son decides he's had enough of the sinful life and he changes his mind, he repents, and he comes home to his father runs to him. I don't think that our relationship with God is any different. There's no Jesus standing in the way saying, hey, do you believe in me? Oh, you don't? Then you can't go home to your father. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
How do you wait? You got one. They got me on this one, and I don't know, and it's okay because I don't know. But like, how do you rationalize the fellow sinner on the cross?
You mean the thief on the cross?
The thief on the cross. That like you'll be with me in my Father's kingdom. Is like, what do you do? I don't know that it matters. I don't think that it does.
Well, what
but
was
it's
the guy stealing?
It would point
what was
to.
He on the cross for? Was he stealing because the people in power made it so that he couldn't afford food? Like, was he really that bad of a guy? Mm-hmm. Like, what do we know about that thief? Why was he stealing? Was it actually stealing? If Jesus was up there innocent, then.
But it would speak to their point though, because all he says is, "I believe in Jesus." Like all he did was believe, and then he gets to go to heaven when he dies, right? Like it would paint the traditional narrative, or you wouldn't. How would you refute that? Not that you have to.
I don't know that there's anything to be refuted, because like the thief, people were being told by Jesus before he ever died that they are forgiven. He didn't say, I forgive you, and it's my blood that makes you clean. He was saying, your sins are forgiven. Get up and walk, like stop believing that you are a victim. Stop letting this system of belief control you and convince you that you're a dirty, wretched sinner that's in need of forgiveness. What if that was never told to you? What if you didn't take that on? What if you didn't put on that costume and that belief that you aren't worthy? Who would you be if you didn't have that thought? And that's where real freedom is taking off, getting rid of everything that prevents you from seeing who you really are, which is love. That's where we emanate from.
The most interesting thing is like when you say it, like, and I've been doing a lot of I don't like boiling it down to the simplest form. It's like, what is Christianity? Love God and love people. You say that, everybody agrees. And then when you say, okay, so the crucifixion doesn't matter, they're wait. And that, it's like, and we keep both. It's like, everybody agrees that love God and love people is most important. And we just skip the part about, in order to love God, you got to love self. Like that's weird for us. But so I don't want to ramble on. We can have anytime you want to have a theological conversation with somebody that's I'm in. So we can. There's any moment that seems worthy of a conversation. If you want to use this platform, please, because that's what it's all for me. So, but thank you for coming on. I'd love to have
you on my show as well. I haven't relaunched it in a while, but I have the Conscious Rebels Network now. And we want to bring on other people to share and to lead discussion and stuff. So if you're interested in coming on to be a guest, I'd love that.
I would love to, yeah. And then I guess I want to, self-promotion. Anything else? I didn't go on your links. So are you building a community, I assume? Or we just launched
3 weeks ago. Okay. We've got 76 members in the community so far. It's a mentorship network. It's going to ultimately be member-led. It currently has 2 meetups a month, with me leading them. But ultimately, I do want to bring in other creators who want to have their own kind of channel on the network. We use the school platform. It's uncensored. There's a community where you can post things and share resources. Ultimately, we want to, and all my programs are included. I used to do, I still do technically coaching, but I've shifted more into mentorship with this network. Not that I don't offer coaching, but it's meant to be a community for people who are seeing through the matrix and wanting to expand and shift their energy out of victimhood into love and creativity and freedom. And I'm loving it so far. We have our next meetup tomorrow, actually. So, wait, no, Thursday. We meet Thursday. So
that's fantastic. Yeah, I haven't figured out what this all crystallizes into or catalyze. I don't know what the catalyst for this is for me, but it's interesting. I think there's something about, there's a bunch of these micro, you'll have one, Aaron has one. It's like, how do you, I don't know, something about harmonizing it for me is like where I'm like, I don't know what that looks like, but I appreciate you coming in any way I can support it. Like I would love to sit in there and whatever that looks like. So, I think it's cool what you're doing. I appreciate your story, and I wouldn't mind coming and doing episode 2 with you. There's plenty to dig into. I really want to know, what kind of van is it? You in a Dodge
Mercedes.
or you in a Mercedes? Smart, very good. I tried to put my wife in a trailer for a season, and we made it the first weekend, and homegirl doesn't camp, so it wasn't for us. It wasn't for us. Great conversation. I'd like to have more. I hope this wasn't diminishing to anybody. I suspect that this will be frustrating. If you're that person, the best way to have this conversation is to come on here and have the conversation so everybody can hear it. That's like, we had to take the manifesto down because it was offensive, diminishing, and it wasn't my best work, but like the idea would be, we're going to say some things that not everybody's going to agree. We can't all agree. We don't know the nature of our president. Is he good or is he not good? So it should be tolerable for us to have different perceptions of the book, different perceptions of the religion, different perceptions of Jesus. I'm trying to build a bridge for all of them. I'm not trying to breathe or emit false prophecy. I think heresy. Jesus was the greatest heretic of all time. So I appreciate everybody listening. Thanks, Pineapple Crew, for keeping us on the rails, the production. To you, the listener, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't, let me know. If you really didn't like it, if you're passionately against what was said here, I would love to just have a conversation with you, because maybe we got a blind spot. Maybe she's got a blind spot. Maybe I didn't see something, and maybe this is really, really dangerous. I think it's dangerous to the religion. Generally, I think Jesus was anti-religion. I'm sorry. I see that very clearly. So I think we can do better. Love should abound. Human flourishing should be a thing that we're talking about. I don't think we're disgusting sinners. I think we're wonderful creation. We just need to get in alignment with our God. That's what I think. So thanks. We'll catch you next time.